Well, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, you know what? I feel like whenever I say that, I'm introducing a circus. But instead, in some ways, yeah. Welcome to the Lake Cities podcast with Chris and Lucas. I am the illustrious Chris Pinkert, as we have discovered for several weeks in a row, as I cannot say my own name.
Ever.
I'm Pastor Lucas Pinkert of First Baptist Lake Dallas. With me is Chris Respis.
Hey, Chris Respis.
The Reverend Chris. You know, you're actually the Reverend Chris Respis in my phone since you.
Oh, really?
You updated your own contact info on that new Apple thing. But I'm not updating your picture.
They're both ugly. It doesn't matter.
No, I like the one where you're in the Carolina blue a little better than I like the orange.
All right,
you know? I get that you got to represent both.
Got to represent.
With us today is a lady who was a good Southern lady.
Okay.
Who was a councilwoman. She was the mayor pro tem.
What?
She was the acting mayor of Lake Dallas. She was then a councilwoman again.
My goodness.
Now she is serving on the CDC. She was one of 3 people that was at last week's city council meeting.
All right.
It's the fabulous, the talented, the lovely Andi Nolan. How are you?
Well, hello. Thank you for having me. I'm a little nervous.
Don't be.
No, don't be nervous.
Good to have you.
Well, here we go. Well, thanks, guys.
Yeah, I think nerves, everybody says that they're nervous whenever they come on, but I think that that's mostly because of your very loud shoes.
Today is my socks.
Is it your socks today? Nice.
Wow.
It's getting orange.
Yeah. So Chris's daughter helps him stay up with his kicks.
Indeed.
He's always got good shoes. Colton's not here today, but he's always envious of your shoes.
Yes. She tries to keep me up to date.
So let's talk a little bit about the city of Lake Dallas, Andi, a subject that you know a little about. I do want to talk to you. You're a school counselor, and we don't want to try to get you into too much trouble, but a little bit of trouble is always good.
As long as it's not illegal.
Yeah, there you go. There you go. So we wanted to talk to you a little today about what's happening in the city of Lake Dallas. We've had a huge change in leadership. One of those changes in leadership is that you are now no longer on our city council. Now you're serving on the CDC, which for people who don't know, that is not the people who determine whether or not we have to wear masks. It's not the Center for Disease Control, CDC.
Okay.
This is the Community Development Corporation.
Yes.
Right, which is a citizen-run organization within the city that helps with community development.
Okay.
So you've been serving in some sort of capacity the city of Lake Dallas now for how many years? Almost 10?
Oh, no, 6 years.
Okay.
So I was on council 6, so this is
Okay.
going
Well,
into my next chapter.
I'm rounding up.
Oh, that's
right?
right.
It's
Hey.
above. It's above
It's
5.
above 5,
That
yes.
means it's 10. That means it's
that's
10.
right. That's right.
That's true.
Okay, so you've been serving on council for 6 years. You've seen that means 7 different mayors. You were one of those, or is it just 6?
No, actually, I think there was 1, 2, 3. Not counting my little short 4-month stint.
Right.
There was 3.
Okay.
City managers, we've had
The city managers,
3.
several. Yep. A couple of police chiefs.
Yes, one of them was in there. He was a police chief and city manager when I first came in.
So what have you experienced in your last 6 years in Lake Dallas city government, and where do you see the city right now as we're now, no city manager, no police chief, no mayor. Charlie Price
We have Charlie Price
yeah,
stepping
Charlie
in.
Price
He's
has
doing a
stepped
good
in as the
job.
mayor pro tem, which Megan Ray reminded him of every time she made a motion last week, which was pretty hilarious. But so what have you seen during your time serving in Lake Dallas, and where do you kind of see the city right now?
Oh, gosh, that's a really big question. When I
You're
first
welcome.
came in, I don't know. I'm going to try to – I'll see if I can focus myself in a path and not jump all over.
Okay.
When I first came in, I know there were a lot of people that were upset that the city manager was also the chief of police. I know the city manager prior to that kind of ran the city into the red.
Okay.
And so there was the city manager that replaced him, that was also chief of police, did bring us into the black, but there was also no spending where there needed to be as far as updating our police department. I mean, we were the only department that didn't have computers in their cars, and it's so much more efficient and accurate, too. I mean, that way they're not going on memory or
from the home office, too, and it was wild.
We still had we had a jail that was not really properly manned, and luckily no one was hurt in there, and it didn't get the city in trouble. And my concern, I really was kind of afraid when we went to dispatch at Denton County. I was like, oh, it's not going to be as good because these guys are right here. when I called Denton County about a strange truck on my street, I was still on the phone with Denton County, and there was an officer on my street.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's 2.4 square miles or whatever. They can get there pretty quickly unless they are with another incident. Yeah.
Yeah.
But so we were kind of behind the times in our PD. We had really good people working for the city, and the council. I think it was transitioning because there's three of us that came on.
Yeah.
So it was a relatively new council that came on, and then we had some turmoil. Mm-hmm. I don't even want to get into all that.
Yeah, but it existed. If you were here at the time, you know.
It was rough. You know, what's funny is I look back and just where the growth of where I am now from where I was then. Like, one of my first acts was something that I voted in a way that I thought I wanted to make. I didn't want to alienate my council, but at the same time, I felt there was maybe a better way to handle it.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Initially, and I didn't kind of stick with my gut, and I kind of went with the flow. In the end, it wouldn't have made a difference, but just I think it made me really realize that you have to vote the way you think is right. Hopefully people will give you input in the city to help guide your vote.
Right.
But a lot of times they don't. You don't. There are items that come up and there's no input whatsoever. So then it is kind of what you feel is the best decision for the city.
I want to pause you real quick. I know that there's a lot more to it, but what's that like? Because that's always been one of the things I've been really fascinated by in Lake Dallas in particular, is because I've done invocations at meetings or attended meetings where I might be the only citizen, or it might be me and Christy Blue, who we had on a few weeks ago, runs the Lake City's Buzz page. She's a doll. But what's that like as a council person? Not being able to have community feedback, or seeing on Facebook or hearing, all these folks that have complaints about, leadership in the city and things like that, and yet nobody's coming to you whenever you actually have the ability to make a difference. And so you don't have some of the guidance and things that you need from the voices that you'd like to hear from.
I'll say, so let me go back to when I first ran. I thought I was going to be, one with the people, and I'm going to listen to the citizens. And I think everybody, when you go into it, that's, what you want to do. And then you get in and you realize there are limitations. You can't openly discuss city business, or you'll violate the Open Meetings Act if it's something that hasn't been discussed previously. So if they want to put in a development, the city council, it's not that we're not listening. We cannot engage in those conversations before it goes to a publicly posted meeting.
Oh, wow.
And there will be times that things that no one will contact us. I had my cell phone, even though they said, no, you don't want to do that. I said, yeah, I do. And on my business card, that was my card, my whatever you want to call it, it was outside of City Hall in the little vestibule area. And I put my cell phone on there. And they're like, you'll get all kinds of calls. I'm like, that's okay. If they want to call me personally on my cell phone, as long as it's not a problem, I'm good with that. And I could probably count on one hand how many people that I didn't know, because people that will call you, but people that I didn't know that would actually that would call. And they might be, well, I guess maybe not one hand. They're a little more than maybe a couple hands. But of those people, I mean, I would go and I sat in people's living rooms. I met with them at City Hall. I stood out in the streets and got bitten by mosquitoes, talking to them about maybe their drainage issue or their street or neighbors or whatever, code violations. And so I think, and I'll speak for myself, not for everybody else, but I think that the council, anytime anybody's reached out, they've been more than helpful. But when nobody reaches out, then I don't know what to do beyond maybe just educating people that this is how you reach out to people. It's funny, as I've had some time to reflect on things. And it's funny, an election will really, especially an election that you're not running in. Yeah. And I'm like, it gave me some time to reflect on things, opportunities maybe that I missed. Okay. And maybe there are ways that we could have reached out, or even if we couldn't. I'll say our librarian at the time, she was really good about keeping everybody what was going on.
You're talking about Natalie?
Natalie, yes. She did a really good job on really pushing out what was going on in the city and pushing it out on Facebook. But if there wasn't maybe another opportunity to somehow engage people or make it even easier, I know because not everybody knows how. Okay. Let me step back. I'm still a little nervous, but they, to go on the website and dig through all the emails, and I'm going to email that person and email that person. I think they did make it to where you could hit one and email all.
Right.
But I don't know. I know there had maybe an opportunity, and I know when Mike Mayberry, sorry, Mike, Mike McCaleb, different Mike in town. When Mike McCaleb was mayor for a year, he sat up there and to meet with the mayor like on Mondays, and nobody would come.
Right.
Oh man.
But if that was something maybe that could happen again, and maybe give that a trial and say, come up. I mean, we can't maybe talk about things that are going to go up to a vote, but, how about just some things that you're concerned about, or even things that we voted on, maybe they don't understand why that vote was there.
Yeah.
And I think that's another big thing is if people aren't there, they don't hear the discussion, and you read the minutes and why they vote yes or why they vote no, but you didn't hear the entire discussion, and that would answer a lot of questions. And I do know that people, they have to work,
Right.
Yeah.
or they're taking care of kids. I'll say in my 6 years, I've missed a lot of my family time to be up at City Hall to try to make decisions for the city. But some of that I regret. I wish I'd maybe step back a little bit and not miss some of those things. But I think just trying to find a way to get more engagement, because just when people throw something out on Facebook, that may or may not make it to the people that it needs to make it
Right.
to.
Right.
And if you want some change, then go to the meetings. When I first got on, I think it was 2 minutes or 2 or 3 minutes that you could speak at Citizens Agenda. Well, we moved it to 5 minutes.
Wow.
And you don't have to be a gifted speaker. Good grief, no one's going to be there.
Yeah.
We're going to talk in front of six
Sounds like
people.
our church.
Come on.
I'm sorry, I didn't.
No, and but I do
Yeah.
think sometimes people are nervous or like, I don't want to get up in front of people and talk.
Yeah.
And I get it, because before I was on council, I got up and spoke, and it was kind of the reason why I ran. It was that's a whole other story, but I remember when I was speaking, I wasn't sure. I'm like, what do I do? How does this work? And you just sign in, and then they'll say, state your name and your address, and then you just talk. Now, what's frustrating is, too, when people are asking you questions because the council can't respond. You're just up there talking.
Yeah, that's always been a really weird rule to me, because when you're like trying to directly address something as a citizen, and you're like, well, and then this, and then you're just kind of looking, and they're just staring back at you like big smiles. And but that's how it's introduced. It says, expect nothing by way of response.
Oh my goodness, we want
anything.
to. But it makes sense, because let's say that you came up and you wanted to talk about, I don't know, the cracked sidewalk in front of your house, and you wanted the city to do something
We
about
would
it.
need a sidewalk in
If
front of my house for that to
we-
happen, but I appreciate that. That's
let's just pretend.
It's another topic.
But let's say that you and I started discussing it, and the council, now we're discussing a meeting. We've violated the Open Meetings Act, because now it's a discussion that was not posted. It's got to be posted before we can discuss it. So when somebody wants to talk about their tree fell down in front of their house because they think the city did something, or whatever the issue is, we just have to sit there and stare at them. And it is so hard, because you want to be helpful and you want to say, well, here's why, or, sure, we'll do that. And sometimes after, at the end, we'll say, Lucas has problems with the sidewalk. Can we make that agenda item? And sometimes, based on what the citizens are saying, we'll ask staff to either look into it or to make it an agenda item so we can discuss it. But otherwise it's a discussion that was not posted.
Yeah.
And so that's the reason for that. It's not that one time we had something, they're like, you're just sitting there, you have nothing to say. And I'm like, I want to say something so bad, I can't.
Point of order, we're not allowed to say anything.
We can't.
Thank you.
We can't say
If we are
anything.
listening, and so it's tough, and but there's just a lot of things that you don't realize until you get on there, and it is frustrating because you do realize there are some limitations that you didn't know about. Streets, we need streets, we need sidewalks. Why don't we have them? And we can get into that. It's a whole other
That might be an entire podcast episode on its own.
That could be. I do
know?
kind of want to touch on that at some point before we're done here. But I had no idea how slowly. They joke and say government goes slowly. Oh, yeah.
Right.
Because you have to have this meeting and then it has to be approved, and maybe you're waiting on funds from another entity to come, or maybe it just seems like it takes forever. Some things can go quicker and some things do not. Streets and sidewalks, that's such a big discussion that that's something that you can't just, my streets, look at it, fix it. It's not, for one, there's money, there's time, there's a lot that goes into it. But so moving on, I'm going down a rabbit hole. So then we had we did have a new council. So we when we hired, I led the charge of let's hire a new city manager when I first came on, and that was kind of one of the things. I was the point person, and that was kind of exciting. But I had a year experience?
Yeah,
not even a full year experience, or maybe I guess at that time I did. I had a year experience, and with another council member, each of us had 1 year experience, and everybody else is brand new, picking a city manager. There's things, even now after 6 years, my questions after 3 years would be different than, you see things, it's like anything else, you start seeing things like when you're dating and you have bad relationships and you're like, next time I'm looking for that.
It.
Or
I can
next
pick
time.
that out. Yeah. Pick that
I think
out.
we've all been there.
Yeah.
Maybe some people marry the first person they date and they get lucky.
It is not how that worked over on this part of the table.
Over here.
Yeah. So
it was like 18 years of dating, I think, is what before I found Kirsten, and now the questions I ask are totally different. Like, what do you mean I'm not supposed to fold it that way? That looks like the front to me. I don't know. Okay, fine. It doesn't go in that drawer anymore either. All right, that's great. I'm just gonna set it here. You point it to me where you want it to go.
Yeah.
See, you're learning.
I'm a slow learner.
Hey.
I've got a very patient wife.
I hear that.
But so that city manager didn't turn out very well. There were some. I will say that it was not somebody that I wanted. It was not my first pick of the pool.
Right.
But because I had concerns. So then we when we
he did present well though.
Oh, amazingly well.
Yeah.
And so then we got our last city manager, and we had him for an interim, and he did a great job. And I had people from other cities, because I know just people either that I went to college with that are city managers or that are on city council, or people that I've just met along the ways. I had a lot of people reach out when he was interim going, y'all got a good one.
Mm-hmm.
You got a really good one there. And when we would go like to the TML conferences, people were coming up going, man, this guy's a gem, this guy's a gem. And so I know that there was a couple of people who were like, oh, I heard he was not good in Denton. But when you're hearing a whole bunch of people say someone is really good, and then a couple of people, I don't know the story where they disgruntled, and that was secondhand knowledge.
Right.
So
it's hard to know whose voice to weigh.
Exactly.
Like, who gets more weight in that situation, right?
And I think it's like anything when you're dating, everybody's putting their best foot forward.
Sure.
Mm-hmm.
And then over time, things start coming out, and that's when you decide, can I live with this or can I not?
Right.
Am I going to marry this person or am I not?
Yes.
Yeah.
And I think just as time went on, and then we had the study, the line strategy group.
Yeah, which that is that's what the Denton Record Chronicle was just referring to in one of their latest articles, right?
That's the study. And let
Okay.
me just say they spoke to nobody on council. They didn't speak to any current employees.
Yeah.
Well, except for the interim city manager that's part of the Lions group.
Williams, right? Mike
Williams.
Wilson. Or Wilson. There you go.
So
I knew
close,
it started with a
so
W.
close. The first two letters.
Come on,
So
baby.
close.
Almost there.
There's a W
If
and
this
I and
was
an L and all.
horseshoes, that's a point.
So, and then when because there were things going into it, it was to kind of identify strengths and weaknesses. And I don't think I'm misspeaking when I can say that people knew, because they saw that there was because somebody posted I keep wanting to say observations that's because the teacher in me, because we
Right.
get observations,
Oh, yeah,
the
right,
evaluations. And you can see very much that there were some very strong points, but there were some issues in the leadership area. And so that was kind of what we were addressing. Is like it not cheap, but it was a lot cheaper than turnover. Turnover is expensive.
Oh, yeah.
But we wanted to stop any future turnover of employees. So we're like, let's get in there. And we saw it as maybe a leadership issue.
Right.
And so as they got into it, and we thought, hey, we'll give leadership training here. And why not, while we got these guys, just kind of all the department heads and maybe everybody can gain from a little, kind of get more bang for your buck, and let's everybody go through this training. But when we got the report, we realized it was beyond that.
Yeah.
And we acted very swiftly. The council, that it was, you have to wait 72 hours because of the posting legally of how long you have to post it. And
otherwise, you get one of those things you were talking about before.
Yeah.
Where you're
open meeting, the violation.
Yeah, the open.
Ding.
Yeah, we didn't want to violate that, so we had to wait the
Open Meetings Act.
Yeah,
it's like they've never been to a coffee shop. Like you can't go to a Waffle House if you're going to violate the Open Meetings Act, because that'll happen immediately.
As soon as you go in.
But and so and the council acted swiftly. So then we got into Natalie, and she was amazing, but she went to a bigger city.
Yeah,
lot
she
more
went to
opportunities of growth.
Yeah, she went to Temple, right? Isn't that what she
That's
said?
right. That's
yeah,
right.
she was on. She was on in February, I think, right before she left.
Oh, she was amazing. Yes, we couldn't afford to pay her what she was really worth. We just couldn't.
And who knew you had to have a specialized master degree to be a librarian?
Knew.
Well, and she did so much more than that with all of her
I'm
community
telling you.
outreach programs. And, it's not just, I think a lot of people think of as a librarian as just a circulation desk attendant, and that's, and she was so much more than that.
Right.
Yeah, the baby bounce stuff, and then she had everybody was like training for a half marathon, was meeting up there on Saturdays to go on to run, and there were all kinds of things that they were doing at the library. It was pretty impressive.
So it really was. So she was leaving, and then we lost our finance director, and then obviously we lost our city manager.
Yep.
And I did appreciate that the chief in the article did say that he is pursuing other
opportunities.
Opportunities. I mean, he did an amazing job. I mean, our department, where it was when he came in to where he left, is just almost unrecognizable. I mean, everything is current. They're well trained. We got a really good group. I know there used to be a lot of distrust in the PD, and I don't know, I wasn't one of these people. I've not been here for 30 years, remember back in the day, but I know it's a highly trained professional organization, and he did an amazing job making those changes. He had a vision. I remember when we first interviewed him before, because the council approves. We can't hire and fire people, but we can approve or not approve the hiring and firing of a department head.
Right.
Okay.
And when he was brought to us, I mean, I just remember sitting there going, "Wow, oh my gosh,
Yeah.
if he's everything he says he is, this is going to be good," and it was. But
the officers are way more polite whenever they pull me over than they were whenever I was in college running through here. So that's good. Great job, Dan.
Yeah, that's it.
Way to train them up.
Thanks, sir.
Do you know why I pulled you over? Yes, sir. Fantastic.
So and all the times, everyone, just because there's people want change, but then when there's change, they're like, "Oh, what's going on?" It doesn't mean that it's a bad change,
Right.
Yeah.
and it doesn't mean that we won't replace with. Not, I'm not going to say replace Dan. That's going to be tough shoes to fill.
Right.
But maybe somebody that's just as good as he is, and that can take what he built and continue to move it forward. And city manager, it's interesting the way this group is going about, because they're helping with the search, and it's really making sure that they're more than just the resume. And they've got a whole formula that other like IBM and big companies use, corporations, to place executives.
Right.
Because you do get into a big expense when you've got somebody at that level.
Right.
Same with the city manager. And you're going to, I mean, we got lucky. We had a 9-month severance. Most city managers and city level are anywhere from one at the minimum to even some 3-year severance. Well,
Oh, good grief.
and that's just standard in the industry, and that's not us. We're not that city. We can't afford that.
Right.
And I understand. I do understand, but it's also frustrating. But I understand because they're at any point in time, their job's on the line when a new council comes in. They just may want their buddy, or maybe they just don't like you.
Yeah.
Or they just want something different. So, their job is balances on every election.
Right.
So I think that's, to kind of make sure that at least the council will take some time and really make sure that that's somebody they want to let go before they just go, no, we don't like you got to go.
Right.
They have to stop and really think about it and look and see if that is the best decision for the city. But so I think this group is going to, I think the way they're going about it is a better way, because anybody that's ever hired anybody, you hire somebody thinking, I mean, we could hire, we, the city, I keep saying we, I'm not on council, they,
Yeah.
I'm still having, it's hard to transition. But they may hire, if they didn't have these guys go through the usual search process, and they hire somebody and say, this guy's amazing, because look at his resume and blah, 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 and then they put him in there, and it doesn't fit, they're not a good fit for our city.
Yeah.
And it's hard to know until they're actually in there
True.
doing it. Now, the questions will probably be different. And the nice thing, the advantage of having the Lions Strategy Group assisting in that is that they went through it and they know what our strengths are and our weaknesses, our opportunities, and our threats. I think that was, yes.
Yeah.
And they've analyzed all that, and they know who would be a good person to come in and make things better. So, any challenges that there are, they know it and they can start addressing them now.
Yeah.
And the strengths, they can bring somebody in that's just going to take that and run with it. And we've got some really good, talented employees, because I will say our CDC is on fire. They got a lot of things in the works that I've done a special meeting, but I haven't sat the full meeting, and I do want to sit down with
the CDC just got permission to make a purchase this past week for a potential area for development, which hasn't happened in a long time here,
Right.
which is really great.
And that's good incentive for anybody that wants to come in and develop. We can say, hey, well, we've got this. But I think that we've got some really sharp people on the CDC.
Yeah.
And I think good things are happening there. So if anything great happens right away, it has nothing to do with me being on there. Hey, I was smart. I got in there right there on the tail end. I'm going to ride that wave.
Yeah,
No.
that's exactly right.
I will be able to take zero credit for that.
Yeah.
But your name will be on it,
Hey,
so
that's it.
you'll be able to take some.
Get a ring.
Right,
Well,
yeah,
I got to
it's
say-
your own personal humility that's going to keep it from happening,
Gosh,
right?
no,
I'm going to give Andy
Dave.
credit. Well done.
See,
Well
look what
done.
happened when I got on CD.
Yeah.
No. That was all the amazingness is already in the works. And there's
Yeah.
some things. There's some. I did arrange a meeting because everyone was always like, "Why aren't we more like Roanoke? Why aren't we like Roanoke?" So I grabbed Charlie Price
Please
and our
don't
city
turn us into
manager.
Roanoke.
Well, just kind of
They
how
have
they
a Krispy
were.
Kreme, bro. Slow down.
Okay, that's true. And a twisted route. So I'm not hating on everything in Roanoke.
Well, they have like 20 square miles to our like 2 square miles. I mean,
Yeah.
we can't be.
We have 1/10 of the.
But just kind of how they fixed up they were a little downtown, and then they really
Right.
made it a place where people wanted to go and spend their money. And,
Sure.
and we know
Yeah,
tax revenue is a good thing.
It's cool, yeah.
Takes some of the pressure off the property owner when we get
Right.
the tax revenue up. But got a number of some guys that did some development there that I'm going to reach out to with
Cool.
another CDC member. And they may say thanks, but no thanks.
Right.
But hey,
You know,
they
you-
may say that's
what we
yeah,
were looking
we're
for.
interested.
This is interesting, right? And it's the old like you miss every shot you don't take.
Absolutely.
Right? So
Absolutely.
and that's been one of the things that I think is really encouraging about seeing, especially the council right now, because like you said, when you came on, you and this the other council person who were able to start the process of getting a new city manager, you all started that process because you were the longest tenured with 1 year of experience. Well, now we've got council people that have been on for several years that know they're going to have different questions that they're going to ask after everything that the city's been through, because they've been through some of these ups and downs. They're going to have a better idea of what our city needs, especially because of the consultancy survey and those kind of things. Where do you see now from the outside, I want to say that the outside looking in a sort of way, now that you're no longer on the dais, now that you are just part of the citizenry, where do you think Lake Dallas's biggest opportunities for improvement lie outside of that crack in my sidewalk?
Well, I will say that this year it's going to be tough because we didn't have the tax revenue because of COVID.
Right.
Right.
That's going to hurt a lot of cities.
Sure.
I mean, it just is. I hurt a lot of businesses.
Yeah.
But I think that trying to get business in here and the right business will certainly be something. I'm not sure. Okay, what was the question?
Yeah, no. Like, what's our biggest opportunity? Because I think, getting the right business is a really important thing, right?
Yes.
Like, as much as I love Tex-Mex food, there are about 6 different taco joints that I can throw a rock at and hit from here. And each one of them has their own unique thing, which is perfect for me because I know where I want to go get carnitas and I know where I want to go get barbacoa throughout the week. But we need as a city selecting the right businesses to come in here to make not necessarily Lake Dallas has to be a destination,
right?
But to give people when they come to Lake Dallas a unique experience. So is that where you see our biggest opportunities finding businesses that are going to be tailored to do that?
Well, I will say this. There are some, I know we've been known to be difficult to work with as a city. Just the process of getting permits and things of that nature. It's come from the individual, from the business owner. Something needs to change.
Yeah.
And I know that that's one thing that has been talked about is how do we make it, how do they make it more business friendly and easier to work with? So it's not so difficult to get to get through the process. And so I suspect doing that will also help. So make the city easier to work with. You bring in the right kind of business. It can be a beautiful union, and boom, you got some tax revenue.
Right.
That sounds easy enough to me.
Yeah, it does.
All right, thanks, Andy. Go get it done. No.
Get her done.
I'll pass on the word.
I know that's right. So what kind of businesses would you like to see in Lake Dallas?
Well, I know people like restaurants. Restaurants are, if it's the right kind of restaurant, it can be sustainable. Because economy good, economy bad, people are eating.
Yeah.
It's.
I'll keep them in business.
You know what I learned today? I got the most terrible, sad news today. We went to Buffalo Wild Wings for their traditional, buy one, get one on Tuesdays. There's a national wing shortage.
What?
The Buffalo Wild Wings we went to only had 50 traditional wings for the rest of the week.
What?
Yeah, so
the chickens aren't affected by COVID.
that's what I'm talking about, right? Like, how does this how is that kind of oversight allowed in the restaurant industry? But to your point, I mean, the right kind of restaurant. We drove to go to Buffalo Wild Wings.
Right.
We were disappointed when we got there and get your junk together, Buffalo Wild Wings. But those kind of places are, and they had some great deals during COVID where we were picking stuff up from them. And unfortunately, that was not revenue that we gave to our city and our community.
Sure.
But it was one of those, we're going to go eat this because it's what we're craving. So,
Well, I'll say that we have, during COVID, we got to see everybody pull together to try to keep what restaurants we had going. I mean, like Walter's doing their, oh my goodness, if you have not had their deep fried brie.
Oh man, that's some good
with
stuff.
With the raspberries. Yep. Oh my goodness. They've got good food, Beatitudes. They've got good food. Of course, all of the different, the Mexican restaurants have good food.
Yep.
But, something, of course, I'd like to see something with outdoor dining.
Okay.
Yeah.
Covered, maybe just because, when you're in August in the afternoon and you want to
tough.
go to lunch.
Yeah.
A fan in the sunshine isn't going to help you. So maybe
no, it's going to start just blowing hot air.
Blow that hot air.
Oh, I'm just eating in a dryer.
Of course, everyone, we've heard this from the dawn of time, is having a Brahms. And at first I'm like, that many people want ice cream, but then you also have your milk and your other foods that you can get there. So you get your little mini marts.
I think
along
they put
with
sugar
a
in
restaurant
Brahms milk.
along with.
Yeah, I think so. It's different. It's a different
It
milk
is
than
pretty
you get
good.
anywhere. It's so delicious.
So, I know that there's one of the council members reached out to Trader Joe's and they said, thanks, but no thanks. There have been businesses that
Trader Joe's is kind of bougie, though.
Yeah.
Right? Like, that's
It's a
like, I
little
want to
bougie.
slap myself because I use that word, but that's this Trader Joe's is kind of like my sister shops at Trader Joe's. And my sister is kind of like that. Like, I love her, but she's she drove to Trader Joe's in her Jetta and got her coffee that she can only get there. I'm walking across the street to Liberation because I know the farmer that they got it from.
Right.
I've only been to one Trader Joe's down in Houston, and I was like, wow, that's a lot of cool stuff. And at the end of the day, it's just food.
Hey, that cookie butter is all that.
That I spent a whole bunch
yeah,
of
but
money
it's
for.
$15 for.
I ate somebody else's.
Look,
I didn't buy my own.
If my peanut butter doesn't have Peter Pan on it, it's the wrong kind of peanut butter.
No, Jif.
Oh yeah,
Come on now.
Yeah,
We gotta.
I'll wave the Jif flag if I have to.
It doesn't have to be fancy, and that I'm sure their business model, they look and say, oh, that's not sustainable. I do know that the CDC, they've hired a retail coach.
Okay.
Which they go in and they basically go out and find businesses and they look at the area, what's something that would be sustainable and what's needed in the area, so you don't put something silly that the people wouldn't shop at or they don't want, or it's not going to, and then it's going to be an empty building in 6 months. So the retail coach, they do their homework on the area to find out what the needs are, and then they go and they basically promote our city to businesses. So that's one of the cool things at the CDC that I had nothing to do with, that they've taken the initiative to do, which is really cool. And so who knows what all they'll bring in. I mean, I think it'd be cool to see like a Cabela's, but with all of our
come on now,
because we've got camping and boats and stuff, but I don't know if it's big enough for that's. I don't know if that would be the right spot for that.
Well, what's that? There's a place that's like a half hardware store, and I'm not trying to encroach on my folks at Lake Dallas Hardware because much love to you people for helping me out with my faucet this week.
Right.
But it's like a hardware store. It's like a Cabela's, and there's some of those shops that are sort of these all-in-ones that are also very nice.
Well,
it would serve
in our
a lot of
fishing, we're
people.
covered with Joe's Bait and Tackle as far as if you want your fishing gear.
You want your fishing gear or your ladies' hoodies, you can go to Joe's Bait and Tackle.
I just saw that on Facebook. I'm like, cool, I didn't know they had all that stuff.
He's got
I was
some
glad they did
bougie
the
stuff
video.
at his place, too.
Pretty cool.
Yeah.
Well, the nice thing, though, about Joe's Bait and Tackle is then you've got local guys, to help you with what's biting and where's a good spot. And so, you get your bait and your lures or poles or whatever, but you also get kind of personal heads up on the places to fish that you're not going to get if you go to Cabela's. I mean, they're going to say, well, I don't know, make minimum wage. Here's a lure.
Yeah, and
right.
The guy that owns it, Joe, and his son, Little Joe, who's actually bigger than him.
Oh, he's a big old fisherman.
Yeah, but they've won tournaments on this lake for years. I mean, Little Joe was fishing it. He was part of the bass fishing team at Lake Dallas High School. They had a varsity bass fishing team, and he was on it and just killed stuff on this lake.
Wow.
So, he'll tell you where to go, but then if you can, spot his little bass buggy out there, just follow him.
Yeah, right.
That's exactly where you need to go.
I remember him from elementary when he was little Joe, and now he's giant Joe. No, I think and I mean, they were smart to put that where they did.
Yep.
Because, I mean, there was a lot of people out here fishing. So that was.
And it's just right on the road to the lake, just right down Hunley.
And right next to a Yummy Cupcake place. It doesn't.
Oh, yeah.
Take
Lenny
your cupcake
Bird's.
out on the boat. Doesn't get any better than that.
That's dangerous. That's dangerous.
They're everything cookie. I think it's called everything cookie. It's got like chocolate chips and potato chips, and I think that's what it's called.
It's fantastic.
Those are good.
Yeah, that place is going
not
to
a cupcake,
single-handedly
but
give me
it's good.
diabetes. Well, I know we've only got you for a couple of more minutes because I know you've got stuff that you've got to get to. I do want to ask, what do you feel like your biggest accomplishment was when you were serving on council during your time with the city of Lake Dallas, and is there potential? I know you're taking a break now. You're serving with the CDC. You're in a citizenry role. Is there potential to see Andi Nolan back in Lake Dallas and serving in some capacity, in an official elected capacity? That's what I'm talking about.
Well, let me start with the accomplishments.
Yeah.
It's funny is I was just as my time ended and I was going through old emails and going, oh yeah, I forgot about that. I forgot about that. I mean, little things like when I first got on, it was 200. The state law requires a 200-foot notification for zoning change. I'm like, why? There's hardly anybody. I mean, can we not make it 400? And they did. And that wasn't anything you had to vote on. It was just administratively, okay, now it's 400. So it can, touch more people, because that was what kind of got me interested in the beginning. Like I said, was a zoning issue.
Yeah.
And I wasn't notified, and it would have greatly affected me. It was right there at the front of my neighborhood. But one of the things, and again, I hate to take any single credit because everything is a team effort.
Yeah.
Lots of people bring an idea to the table, and then all of a sudden, it's still the whole team has to be on board.
Right.
And the Youth Advisory Council is probably my favorite. I remember I was on a plane and I was reading a TML magazine in some city. They had that. I'm like, why don't we have this? Why aren't we getting our teens involved?
Yeah.
And And so when I got back, I kind of threw it out there, and everybody's like, well, yeah, let's check into it. And so I went with the city employee. We went and talked to them over in Louisville to find out how they did their youth advisory council. And we went to a summit. We were just kind of, the two of us sitting there with no kids. We're just sitting there and said, what are y'all doing? And it was really neat at the summit, the educational opportunities they had, even things like storm water drainage and stuff, things that kids wouldn't think about. But, when you're washing your car, that's going down into the drainage. So it made them aware of things. And so getting that kind of initiating that was a big thing, just because I'm in education and I teenagers. Now they're all growing up. I have one teenager left at home, but I wanted an opportunity for them to get involved.
Yeah.
And we've just really had some great kids that have been on there. We never got to streets and sidewalks.
Yeah, we'll get there next time.
Man, it's a big discussion.
I know.
That would be one that would really. I think
controversy.
Well, I do. Because you hear people, that's what people want, are streets and sidewalks, and it's not that the city doesn't care. It is so. Seriously, I'd really love to come back and talk about that.
Yeah.
Maybe you get Dusty or somebody from the city to come that's an expert. I'm not an expert by any means, but and I don't know where I'll be in May. Right. As far as I'm working on a certification in mediation, not to replace my day job,
right, but
to supplement that, and maybe when I retire, getting into that.
Like being an advocate for people, is that what you're talking about?
Sort of like family or divorce mediation.
Oh, that's awesome.
I think it's a way to, of course, my first advice would be don't get divorced.
Sure.
Right.
Having been through it, it's not easy.
Yeah.
And it is, especially with kids, it's the most, it's the hardest thing, and the guilt, it never goes away that, your family isn't together. So that, just a little side note, if anybody is out there is thinking about it, try to work through it every possible way that you can first.
Yeah.
But my ex and I, we're still friends. We've had a good working relationship, and I think some of it is we went through mediation.
Yeah.
So we didn't have lawyers trying to tear us apart.
Right.
We sat down in a room for a day and we worked it out.
Yeah.
And I think that helped us maintain a good working relationship in raising our kids. So I just kind of want to pay it forward and do something maybe along those lines.
Yeah.
I've been serving the city for 6 years, and it is important to me. And I would like an opportunity at some point. I've got some ideas I want to float by the council just on, now that I've had, like I said, time to sit back and reflect on citizen engagement, citizen education, so they do understand kind of how city government works without it being like sitting in a class.
Right.
That's no fun.
Yeah.
That would bore anybody. It's taken years in training to figure it out, so it wouldn't be a quick fix. But just so when people say, why can't we have this, or why isn't this, that way they have a better understanding, and they realize that really the people that are up there are giving of their time, giving up time with their family. It's not, there's no prize for it. You don't.
Right.
I was joking, say I think I got like 2 cold pieces of pizza. That's my payoff. There's not corruption.
Cold.
There's no corruption or any, good old boy thing that I think people think, because there is just that mistrust for government. There is, and rightfully so. And I'm not saying that's never been that way. I hear people talk about things that in the past with the city, and so I understand why there is mistrust. But it's a whole different group. And I would like them to see that it's really, it's city government. They're taxpayers.
Yep.
They're not some entity. They're paying the exact same taxes. With tax goes up, they're paying it too. The roads that are bumpy, they're driving them too.
Yeah.
Not having a restaurant, they're not eating there either. It's it's affecting them equally. There's no special. They go through everything that everybody else does.
Sure.
But then they give up a whole bunch of time, especially during budget. Oh my goodness.
And that's coming up in October, right?
Yeah, but the budget season is starting now, so there'll start being meetings. I remember sitting, through 4 meetings a month for 5 hours, and sometimes the meetings, just regular meetings, are long. You'll sit there for 5 hours, and I got to get up at 5 o'clock. And when you get home, you don't just go to bed. You're just replaying everything in your mind, and so you lay down, and you're just. And my poor husband, he had to get the recap of da 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 da. He's like, trying to sleep here. It's 1 o'clock, and you're just trying to unwind, and then you got to get up at 4. At 5. Well, maybe some at 4. Me at 5. And then go and be productive at your job. But I would like there to be, and that might be some ideas that I want to float towards maybe during the citizens agenda. Maybe I'll email the council members, but something to kind of help with that. And so so it's everybody coming together instead of a them against us, that they realize the council is them.
Yeah.
Right.
You know, they were all friends and neighbors before they were on council, and they still are.
Right.
But if you really have concerns and you have questions, just ask them. I mean, they'll tell you. I mean, they'll sit down with you. They'll explain what's going on. Again, because you can't really throw it out there, everything out there on Facebook.
Yeah.
So that's that. So I'm excited. I'm going to still serve, and I got my adopt a spot.
Okay.
Nice.
Got that going. So yeah, one more thing.
I've adopted a spot, and it is the area where I keep all my stuff. My desk is my new adopted spot.
Is that it?
Yeah, and it was I was voluntold to adopt that spot as my wife and my secretary came in, and they were like, "Hey, this needs to be clean because we're tired of looking at it." So there's my adopted spot for this week.
Well, I dragged my husband along, and we took our dog too. I said, maybe there'll be a bag of money. There was no bag of
money, not this time.
Candy wrappers and beer cans. Yeah. No bag of money.
No,
well, the next time the Gottis come
Got 'em
through
out.
and just ditch something out the window, we'll hope that it's
Some
on your
gold
adopted
bullion.
spot. There you go.
So it's got to be in that certain spot though. So if anybody out there wants to throw out money and gold bullion,
Do it in Andy's adopted
look for
spot.
my adopted spot.
Well, thanks so much for being on. Again, if you are a Lake Dallas citizen and you want to know how to get involved, make sure that you go check out lakedallas.com, which is our city's website. Lets you know where all the council meetings are happening. They're normally the second?
It's second and fourth.
Second and fourth Thursdays at 7 p.m. Lake Dallas City Hall.
And one thing, I know we're trying to cut this short,
Yes.
but if they go on there, they can click. It'll have the day. You go to agendas,
Right.
And it'll have the day of the meeting, and there's one that's the agenda, and then like usually the Monday before the meeting, if you click on there, it'll be a thing. I'll say packet. And that is the exact packet that the council gets.
Oh, wow.
So the public can get every single thing that the council gets when they're making their decisions. So I mean, it's all out there.
Yeah.
There's no secrecy. It's all there. It's posted for everybody. And sometimes it's hundreds of pages. It's printed off, but if you want to flip through it on your computer, but that way you just to kind of help. If they
and then whatever you don't like, put in your card to speak publicly about it before it gets to the discussion, and then make your voice heard.
Or send an email and say, hey, why is this that y'all are, thinking about changing the zoning for this? Just, contact a council member and
why
and
aren't there
ask them.
goats on Carlisle? That's what I want to know.
We need a strong goat orchard.
Strong goat.
We need a goat orchard. Well, Andy, thank you so much for your time. For everybody that's listening to Lake City's podcast, I've been Lucas Pinkard this week.
Yes, you have, and I'm still Chris Rasmus.
That's fantastic. That's so good.
You were so quiet today, Chris.
I'm reserved.
Y'all got the
Yeah,
big-
every now and then Chris
behaving.
will hang back.
I'm behaving.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Kinda.
He's refereeing.
That's it.
That's it right there.
I'm mediating.
Y'all can't see it. He's wearing a striped shirt.
There you go.
Actually, he's
You're
wearing
the
tie-dye. He's wearing tie-dye today.
I'm bright today,
Man.
man.
He's pretty fancy.
indeed.
Straight off his
Away.
trip from Austin. Well, hey, thank you guys for listening. We will see y'all next week.
Holla.
Chris and Lucas want to thank you for listening to the Lake Cities Podcast, a service provided by FBC Lake Dallas and Antioch Christian Fellowship. If you have a topic you would like for Chris and Lucas to discuss, email them at thelakecitiespodcast@gmail.com. Make sure you give us a review and click on the subscribe button to get the latest episodes each week.